I don't have the letters with me except on a pen drive, but we have no laptop. The devotee didn't show up for the sound and for the screen. So anyway, I can talk about the history of that. Last week, I showed you the film where Prabhupada was in New Jersey, Long Branch. Who saw the film? Everybody was here. That was after his stroke. It was a serious stroke is more serious than a heart attack because there's paralysis. And Prabhupada had been in, and we saw myself, he was blind in his left eye, and he couldn't move his left side, left hand, left leg. So that's a sign of a stroke, the left side. So the doctor came, and Prabhupada learned from the doctor that he should get out and walk every morning. And that officially started the morning walks every day. Prabhupada started that after the stroke. So we wanted to stabilize Prabhupada because we didn't know what to do. He told us the only cure for a heart attack or stroke is to massage the body to get the circulation moving throughout the body. So we brought him to a hospital, Beth Israel Hospital. And we were able to stabilize him properly. We kept a 24-hour watch. Each devotee had a certain time. So my time was like from 3 in the morning to 7 or so. So I was with Prabhupada, I was massaging his leg. He was always, there was massage going on all the time. Because that was the only medicine, and of course chanting. We were chanting while we were massaging. So during my time, this must have been, Prabhupada stayed in the hospital for about 4 or 5 days until we checked him out. The reason being is the doctors wanted to do a series of tests on him to determine what was wrong. And Prabhupada made it implicit, no needles, because that's how they draw blood. They love to draw blood, or to do a spinal tap. And so that morning, early in the morning, it was like 5 or 6 in the morning, so I was there. They wanted to bring Prabhupada downstairs to where they do all the tests. So Prabhupada sat on the gurney, and I pushed the gurney and followed the nurse downstairs in the elevator to the floor where they do their lab work. And we went into this room, and there was a cloth room separator. And we were waiting for the nurse to come. We thought they just wanted to examine Prabhupada, you know. So she came out with a huge needle, and that set Prabhupada off. He said, "Take me back immediately." And so I was stunned. I said, "The Swamiji, he doesn't want this test, so we're leaving now," I told the nurse. And she got very angry. She said, "You can't do that. This must be done. You'll kill the old man." That's what she said. She was making me feel guilty. But when I hear Prabhupada's order, I snap to it. I wheeled him right out of the room, except I forgot which floor he was on. There was only 3 floors. So I got in the elevator, we went to the first floor and the second floor, and he was on the second floor. And Prabhupada all the time was chanting, sitting in a lotus with his legs crossed. And his back was towards me because I was pushing the gurney. And he was looking in each room. He knew which room it was. I didn't. And then on the second floor he said, "Here." And I wheeled him in, and it was his room. because it had scent. There was flowers and everything. So then he told me, call your brother and bring the car now. So I called Brahmananda, and he brought the car immediately. We got probably a taxi because we didn't have a car in those days. And as we put Prabhupada in a wheelchair, and as we were wheeling him out, the doctors ran after us. He said, they said the same thing, you'll kill the old man, and they were trying to make us feel guilty that we should listen to the doctors and not to Prabhupada. But we listened to Prabhupada, of course. We didn't care what they said, because we knew Prabhupada was in Krishna's hands, not in the doctor's hands. So we wheeled him back to the temple, and Brahmananda rented a house in Long Branch. And that's where I showed you the film showing after the stroke how animated he was. And there was no paralysis, nothing. Nothing remained from that heart attack in his body, except he did say he had a ringing in his head. And that disturbed him, especially when he was translating. And that stayed with him until 1968, that ringing. It's like Prabhupada got renewed life in 1968 because he was traveling all over the world, 15 times around the world. I mean, that takes a toll on somebody who's 70, 75 years old. And it didn't bother Prabhupada at all. He had a renewed life in him. But he wanted to go back to India to get Ayurvedic treatment. He felt that the heat, because it was in July, he missed the heat, you know. He couldn't adapt to the New York climate so much. It was always cold and damp. I mean, really cold. His room was heated, but it was steam heat, of course. These buildings were at least 50 years old, built in the early 1900s. And they had steam heat, but the superintendent who lived in the building, he would always turn it off because it was very costly to heat the whole building for everybody. So we'd leave it on for an hour and then turn it off. And that's how much heat we got in that building. Prabhupada's rent was only $75. It was a studio apartment. I have a picture of it I was going to show. With a small kitchenette, very small kitchenette. We had to buy a stove because there was no stove in there. So we went, New York has a lot of these used from restaurants that went bankrupt. They used stoves, used stainless steel pot, I mean everything. All nicely done, you know, they weren't dirty. The stove was immaculate. It only cost us $20 to get a small stove, 4-burner stove. It was $20 only. We got big pots and pans. They cost a few dollars only. And we were able to cook the dal and the cereal in the morning and a pan. We made our own ghee. Prabhupada refused to use oil. We only used ghee, but you couldn't buy ghee. So we would make our own ghee at night. We would put 1 or 2 pounds of butter in a pan and keep it on the lowest flame. And by morning, we would skim it to skim off all the salt and impurities, and we'd have nice yellow ghee. And we only use ghee for prasadam. Even for the people who were living there, we ate also that. In LA, we thought of a scheme because Prabhupada said we should, as far as possible, always use ghee even for the devotees. We shouldn't cook in oil. So we would go to the dairy companies, and they would have butter that was like a week old, because they had to take it off the shelf by law. And we asked them, why don't you give the butter to us? Because they didn't know how to make ghee in those days. Now they do, so you can't do that. So they would give us 100, 200 pounds of butter. And we would make it, big woks we had, and we would make it all into ghee. Yeah. And we would make ghee, but we'd also make the chana cheese, from they would give us milk that was completely good, but it had expired, and they just throw it away. So they gave us also tons of milk. So we had the best sweets in the whole movement. And we were making sweets daily because we had so much, and it was free. So L.A. that's why Prabhupada named L.A. Dwarka, New Dwarka, and Radha Dwarkadish. Some people criticize Prabhupada for calling Krishna Dwarkadish because he doesn't have a flute. It's Rasabasa, some of his godbrothers said. This is Rasabasa. You can't do that. But I did a film on Dwarka. I sent the Guru Coolies, where's Narayani?
Govinda,
Yeah, I sent Govinda there with the crew, and Purna Pragna did the narration, and we made a complete film on Dwarka.
It was really good. He was so young.
I think, he was 13 or 14?
Like 14, 15.
Yeah, he was only 13. But he was very good along with a few other Guru Coolies. And they made a beautiful film of Dwarka. Yeah. And guess what? In the deity, there's a flute. So how can you say it's Rasabasa? That deity's been there for 1,000, 2,000 years. And it has a flute. And you can see it in the film. So that criticism was nonsense. Krishna is always with the gopis, even in Dwarka. So anyway, to get back to our history.
What month are you in now? June?
Yeah, we're on June and July. So Prabhupada, there's only one letter in June that he wrote the devotees in New York to Brahmananda. And he mentions that he wants to go out, he wants to return to India. He feels he could get renewed life from the Ayurvedic medicine and the heat, the India heat, which his body is used to. But then we got a call from San Francisco that the devotees said, no, don't try to come here because we rented a beach house it's called Stinson Beach, which is it's about 50 miles, I think, from San Francisco. And it's in like a canyon, sort of, because it's a winding road, and then you come to the beach area. It's more of a rocky beach, not a sandy beach. So Prabhupada thought he would go and try it before going to India. He didn't like the ride, though. He got dizzy because it was mountain roads and winding, and he didn't like that. Plus, it was far from the temple. So they had Rath Yatra. I showed you the film last time in 1967. They had Rath Yatra. But Prabhupada couldn't attend because he wasn't feeling well. But he told them how to do the festival. So the festival went on. Shamsundar, of course, made the deities. He was expert in carving. And he showed me one time some of the wood types of wood that could be used. All imported woods from Africa, South America, hardwood, not softwood. And he chose the right type of wood for the Jagannath deities, so they couldn't be damaged, or any bugs could come and eat the wood, termites. Because in California, I think they have a problem with termites, or Southern California.
Was it his flatbed truck that was
Yeah,
started?
yeah. Well, he didn't have a flap. It was a pickup truck, and they put a bed on there, like a wooden bed, with a throne. We didn't make clothes for the deities because nobody knew how to do that at that time. So they just used their, Prabhupada said it's all right because their clothes are painted on them already. So there's no problem with that. And we went, the police came and blocked the roads for the festival. It was a very nice festival. I wasn't there at the time, but we heard about it. I was still in New York. I didn't come until October of 1967 to San Francisco, because my duties at the temple for printing Back to Godhead ended because they were printing in Boston by offset printing. So there was no need of the mimeograph machines anymore. So my service is finished. So Prabhupada, he wrote in letters that he was coming back sometime in November or December. So I thought I'll go there and meet him, because we all really missed him, but I really missed him because I was young, and he was like my father. You know, whenever I had a personal problem, I would discuss it with Prabhupada. Of course, that's not supposed to be. You're not supposed to do that. But Prabhupada listened, and he would give me advice, you know. So, yes.
When did your father take you away?
That was in after opening the Seattle temple. I opened the Seattle temple. At Prabhupada, there's a letter, there's a conversation in Seattle. All of a sudden, he says, I thought Gargamuni should go back to his father, because I didn't want the father to think that he lost both sons. And this way, because I told Prabhupada, my father's old, he can't do the business so much anymore. So he said, then you go back and you help him and you take the business for Krishna. And this way we can print our books. Because there was a problem with funds of printing books. The TLC didn't come out until November of 1968, and Bhagavad Gita didn't get published. But it wasn't the way Prabhupada wanted. He wanted the full editions, which was 800 pages, whereas the abridged edition was 250 or so pages, with no paintings, no artwork. Prabhupada wanted paintings, you know. So that came later. So Prabhupada was in India writing letters to Brahmananda, lots of letters, to keep us enthusiastic. That was very important. And the movement did expand while he was away. More devotees came. We got more advertisement from newspapers. They were interviewing us. And Brahmananda still kept going to the park on Sundays and doing Sankirtan. And it was still very... many people would come, and they attracted many people. They would come back with us for the love feast, ask questions, we would answer them. Ray Rama gave the classes, mostly he gave the classes, morning and evening classes. Brahmananda would give, Kirtananda would give classes, you know. And the temple in Montreal was started also. It didn't officially open until 1968, but it started late in 67. Janardhan, who was there, he was a French devotee. He had already had some affiliation with the Gaudiya Math and studied the philosophy. So he was really interested in having a center there, although his wife was not interested. So anyway, Prabhupada was writing letters from Calcutta. He was a big hit because he brought a Chutananda with him, and one boy from San Francisco came named Ramanuja. He had a big beard. There's a photograph. But he eventually disappeared, though, someplace. He left. So
What month is this?
this would be July, August.
67.
Yeah, 67. The first letter to Brahmananda came on July 24th. He left on the 23rd or 24th, but the same day, because they had to stop over in London. And then they would go to Moscow, and then from Moscow go to New Delhi. So something happened on the way to Moscow. I heard different stories, but Prabhupada mentioned that he was told that someone had smallpox, and they had to quarantine the whole plane for a few days. But Kirtananda said that they had to change an engine. An engine fell off the plane while it was sitting on the tarmac. That's what we were told. So I don't know which is right. Prabhupada says something different. So this was in Moscow, so they had to wait another 16 hours before reaching Delhi. So it was a long, tiring trip for Prabhupada, Yes.
The Chutananda and Ramanuja, they
Yes.
came separately. They didn't travel with
You're right. They came with Kirtananda. He came with Prabhupada.
Kirtananda went with Prabhupada.
Yes. And then Chutananda came like a week or 2 weeks later,
Oh, yeah?
because he had to get the airfare.
Oh, uh-huh.
And Ramanuja also came later.
Were they also trying to evade the draft, or they just wanted to go?
Well, yeah, they wanted to evade the draft also. Everybody was getting drafted. Even I got drafted. But Prabhupada told me, don't worry, they won't take you. And I didn't know this, but when I went, I was waiting in line for the examination. They examine your body and everything. And then I heard my name called on a microphone to come to an office. And I went to the office, and the man was looking at me, and then he looked down and was turning pages. He had a file. He had my file, my health file. And then he looked up, and he went like this, "I'm sorry, Mr. Sharf, but the Army cannot take you." And I go, "Oh, great." He thought I would feel sad, because to serve your country is a great thing, to sacrifice your life. So he thought I would feel sad, and I go, "Oh, wow." So I realized what it was. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I was climbing a tree, and I broke my cartilage. And I had to have an operation. So, and it always was locking. I'd walk, and all of a sudden my knee would lock. So that was a problem. So that was a physical problem that they couldn't use me in the Army. So I said, great. So Prabhupada was right. He said, don't worry, they won't take you. So he knew something that I didn't know.
Srila Prabhupada just sent a movie, and he mentions Greg. That's you,
Yeah.
Greg. And you asked Prabhupada that when I chant Hare Krishna, I cry.
Oh, I did?
Yeah, do you remember that?
Maybe.
You don't remember that.
Or maybe he's making it up. I don't know.
And Prabhupada replied that, no, that's very good that you cry. That's the perfection when you feel separated. You don't remember it.
I don't remember crying. I cried for Prabhupada when he left, when he had to go to India. We all cried at that time because we didn't know what the future was. And we were all young, and we didn't, who's going to guide us? And Prabhupada would be so far away. First we had one jolt when he went to San Francisco. That was a big jolt for us because he stayed there for 3 months. And now he was going away maybe forever. Because he said himself, if I'm going to die, I should die in Vrindavan. So that was when he said that was a big jolt for us, because we didn't know if he was going to come back or not. And then we had the first poison came from within the society at that time. When Kirtananda came back, he said, Kirtananda said that Prabhupada's not coming back. You have to listen to me now, because I'm sannyasi. That was the first sannyas he took in India, and you have to. And that was a first cleansing of the movement to get that Mayavadi philosophy out. When he said that he's the one, and he started chanting Om Shivaya Namah instead of Hare Krishna, and it created a great disturbance because we were all young. We didn't know the philosophy. There were no books except for the Bhagavatam, and those were mostly sold. And there were no first volumes, there were only second and third volumes. And we didn't understand a lot of those stories in those books. So there was nothing that kept us together except the love for Prabhupada. That's the thing that kept us all together. And even though there was poison in the society, no one was really swayed by that poison. And Kirtananda went off with another devotee, and they started this new Vrindavan, and they said, you shouldn't live in the city, you should come live with us. But nobody would go. So, and then Prabhupada told us later that nobody should go until he went there. So there's a controversy about that, because in my book I mentioned that New Vrindavan was started by Kirtananda and Hargreeva, not Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, when he went there, I went with him with Brahmananda the first time. It was 1969. And Prabhupada called it to Kirtananda, your New Vrindavan. He never said my New Vrindavan. And in the Back to Godhead that was issued in 1969, it mentions very clearly in Back to Godhead the founders of New Vrindavan, Kirtananda and Harigriva. It doesn't say Prabhupada. So some people ridiculed me by mentioning that in the book, that New Vrindavan was not founded by Prabhupada. But I have proof of it, Plus we were there. Those people weren't there, so we know. And there was no electricity at that time. So Prabhupada only stayed a weekend. I remember because we had to rent a car, and that was expensive for us in those days. It was a Volkswagen, the smallest car. I still remember how much, $60 for the weekend. That was a lot of money for us when we were only getting $2 or $3 or $4 or $5 a day.
One of those little bugs?
Yeah, it was a red one.
Oh,
Yeah.
small.
So Prabhupada, he sat in the front seat, Brahmananda drove, I sat in the back. Yeah, stick shift. And maybe there was someone else, I can't remember. But we only stayed the weekend, but it was my first taste of milk that came direct from a cow. And it really had a cowy taste. We were used to the vitamin D added milk. Yeah, homogenized, whoever knows what that means. you know. So to taste really cow-tasting milk was a big, and it was very thick and creamy. It was difficult to digest because it was thick, but it was the real thing. And it was my first taste of real cow milk. Prabhupada really liked it, you know. So to get back, Prabhupada stayed in India for approximately from July to late December. He stayed a long time because he was doing preaching. He was a lot of programs with Achyutananda. I even have a photograph on the day that Kirtananda took sannyas of them dancing, and Prabhupada's dancing in Vrindavan, and Achyutananda's playing the kartals. So they did a lot of programs like that.
When did Achyutananda take sannyas?
I don't know. I can't remember.
What month was it when Kirtananda took sannyas?
In August.
August,
Yeah,
67.
yeah. Probably Janmashtami.
In Vrindavan?
In Brahmananda, yeah. He was, the next day he was supposed to go to London. He was supposed to go to London and open a center there, and Prabhupada gave him extra money to open the center because we had a name from the Gaudiya Math, Miss Botwell. She helped start the Gaudiya Math back in the 1930s, and when they all left, she kept the center open. So Prabhupada wanted Kirtananda to look her up and see if he could start a center there. But he never went there. He went directly back to America. And that's when the poison started. But that was a big shock for us, you know. We had to stand tall and learn the philosophy that we had heard from Prabhupada's morning and evening classes and reject that. Because that's the first thing that Prabhupada taught us, is the difference between Mayavadi philosophy and Vaishnava philosophy. Because he always mentioned it, even in the most early days of 1966. So we could recognize what Vaishnava philosophy is and what Mayavadi philosophy is. So we were able to reject what Kirtananda was saying, you know. So anyway, Prabhupada finally did come back. I remember I met this hippie who had a 1932 open Mercedes-Benz limousine, like you see Hitler in the old films, those very long Mercedes cars. He had one of those. And his job was to pick up people at the airport, and that's how he maintained himself, this hippie. So I told him, I want to pick up my Guru Maharaj at the airport. And he said, so I asked him, how much will you charge? Usually he charges $150, $200. So I got him down to $25 because he wanted to meet the Swami, you know. So the Swami arrived, Swamiji.
What month?
It was December. So the weather is still nice in San Francisco, you know. Their season, when the fog comes over the mountains, that's when it's bad. But usually the fog stays, it doesn't move. We always used to watch it if it's going to be a sunny day or a foggy day. And if the fog remains at about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and it's sunny, then we know the fog won't come. So anyway, I picked up Prabhupada in that limousine, and we drove to the temple at Frederick Street.
Was there devotees, a lot of devotees?
Oh yeah, well, he made 20 devotees. While he was there, he made 20 devotees in 3 months, initiated devotees. And then when he came back, there were a lot more interested people waiting to be initiated. So that's when Tamal Krishna got initiated, Vishnu John got initiated. I was there for that. There's a photo there of me and Tamal and Vishnu John in the temple.
When did you get married?
Huh?
When did you get married?
Uh-oh.
I might not want to go into that.
Yeah. I was only married, I think, let's see, August, September, October. I think 3 months only.
Was
Three
that year
of 67.
So when you went there, you got married?
No, I got married in New York, and Achyutananda did fire sacrifice. But it wasn't a legal marriage. When Prabhupada left, I got very lonely, you know. And there was this girl, she kept smiling at me. I was a virgin. I never had a girlfriend, even in school, because I lived in the jungle, never had friends. We lived in a mansion, 22-room mansion, with a lake, swimming pool, 10 acres. I mean, the nearest house was a half a mile away. So there was no contact with other people, much less of a woman, except at school, you know. But I was known as the rich kid, so people didn't want to be. I didn't have many friends, you know. So I was a virgin. I never took any drugs or marijuana or anything because I lived a sheltered life. But I was into social things like the civil rights movement, the anti-war. I was into those things. I was the first hippie in my school. I had long hair. Not too long, but longer than what was the culture at that time. So anyway, she was pushing me her name was Karuna Mai. She's already passed away a few years ago. So she was pushing me to go to San Francisco as soon as possible. I wanted to go right before Prabhupada arrived, which is in December, but she was pushing me to go in October, and we had an opportunity because Govinda Dasi and Goshinder wanted to go, because they were in New York also. We rented a 7-room apartment in the Bowery where all the devotees could live, because there was no place for us to live except the storefront, and nobody wanted to live there. There was no bathing facilities. Only me and Brahmananda were living there. So Brahmananda, it was really cheap because it was in the Bowery. You know, it was like $50 or $70 for a 7-room apartment. It was great because the ladies could have their own room, and the men could have their own room. So anyway, I got married. I was seduced to get married. I know the women won't like that, but it's a fact because I was weak at that time. I was crying and missing Prabhupada so much. And when you get lonely and someone is flirting with you, you get weak. The hormones start working. So anyway, we didn't have a legal marriage, just a temple marriage. And as far as mixing, having sex, that became almost out of the question because Prabhupada said you had to chant 50 rounds. Now I have a tape of which I always listen to when I chant, of Prabhupada chanting 16 rounds, and it takes 2 hours and 40 minutes to say each word distinctly, not going, not like that. And it takes 2 hours and 40 minutes. So if you multiply that, like, so 16 rounds, so 2 hours and 40 minutes, that's at least 3 times. So that's like almost 4 times.
7, 8 hours.
Yeah, so 8 hours, and this is at night. So you may start chanting at 9 o'clock, 9:30. So by 10 or 11, you're falling asleep. So I never got a chance to consummate the marriage. You know, I think one time we didn't chant and we did consummate the marriage, but that was the only time. Because Prabhupada was really insistent on chanting 50 rounds to make sure that the marriage was purified, and if there was a baby, it would be a Krishna conscious baby. But that never happened. So, anyway, so at that time there was a system where people who were moving, everybody was moving to California from New York. There was a whole big movement, you know, gathering of the tribes, it was called. The Be-ins started in those days with Allen Ginsberg, the Grateful Dead, all these rock groups, Jefferson Starship, all of these groups. And so there was a big movement of people going westward. One of my services at that time to make money for Prabhupada is people, there was a boy named Rabindranath Swarup. He was the original. He was a disturbed person, but I hung out with him because he wanted help to clean out apartments. He would get a phone call, we're leaving, whatever's in the apartment you can use or sell whatever. So he would clean out apartments, make a few dollars and give it to Prabhupada and keep a little bit for himself. So I helped him doing that because I had nothing to do. I printed back to Godhead, work in the kitchen, but I wanted, you know, I wanted 24-hour service. So I would help him whenever somebody was leaving to clean out apartments and give the money to Prabhupada. And that's how Prabhupada got his money here and there. There was no steady income. Except when Brahmananda came, he admitted in a conversation he got relief because Brahmananda gave his full paycheck, $400 a month. And that paid Prabhupada didn't have to worry to pay the rent. It was his responsibility. When he trained me up to be the treasurer, then it was my responsibility. He was passing it off to me. So I was always asking devotees, hey, can you donate? You know, because they would also ask me for money for the kitchen department, the art department, the devotee maintenance department. So when it came time for rent paying, I would go to them and say, hey, if you want money from me, you got to give me money. You know, Prabhupada said that's another meaning of Gargamuni. When we got the LA temple, we had to put down $50,000. So I had spiritual guy. We were making money. I had an old man going and selling to the stores, and he was bringing me $5,000-$6,000 cash every week, and I was saving that to make the payment. The owners allowed us to move into the temple before, because we had to prepare Prabhupada's rooms. So, no, and Watsika. Yeah, we had to get out of La Siena because it became a big boy hamburger, like McDonald's. It's called a big boy. So they tore it down there, and we had to get out of there fast because they tore the whole thing down. And all of a sudden, about a month later, we saw that little kid holding a hamburger like this. It was called Big Boy.
Yeah.
That's what it became. So the landlord allowed us to move in about 2-3 months before we put a small down payment on, but he allowed us. They were church people, Christians, so they were very nice and respectful towards Prabhupada. There are 2 properties that, because 2 congregations were merging, they gave Prabhupada a choice to choose which property. And there's one church up the street from Watsika, but it had a lot of property, but a small building. Certainly 100 devotees couldn't live there. But Prabhupada wanted that because he wanted to build a temple. But he realized, for our sake, he chose the other because it had classrooms on Watsika that could be used for living and kitchen. It was perfect for our purpose. It was 4 buildings that were connected. And one building was perfect for Prabhupada's residence, separate.
It was upstairs.
Yeah, his was upstairs. Those were all closets. There were no rooms there. We had to tear the whole, put in piping, all done by devotees. It cost over $30,000 to build those rooms because there weren't in rooms.
My dad donated the remodel of the kitchen.
Oh, yeah, there was no kitchen when we were there. Prabhupada would eat what we ate, what we cooked for the deities.
Your father donated? Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. So there's a separate kitchen. So there's a separate
The
kitchen.
big kitchen, the devotee kitchen.
Oh, that's in the
Yeah.
temple.
Yeah,
Well, that was there.
But they had to remodel.
Yeah, maybe we had to remodel. That's possible.
So what year is this now?
That's 1970.
70.
Well, January, so it's 69, 70. Because we moved 2-3 months before to prepare Prabhupada's rooms so that he could come. Meanwhile, Prabhupada wanted a place that was very quiet where it wasn't noisy. So I rented him a house in Beverly Hills. And that was really, in those days, $600 of rent. Because most houses in those days was like $150 to $200 for a house. This was $600. But it was perfect for Prabhupada. It had a backyard. It was in, Beverly Hills, a quiet neighborhood. And it was a 2-story, unfurnished. So it was perfect for Prabhupada's use. So he stayed there while we were preparing his rooms. And he wrote letters to everyone. I'm staying in Beverly Hills. And devotees were, oh, wow, Prabhupada he thought it was too much for us to spend, but he accepted it, He didn't want us to waste money on him, but I always wanted to give him the best. And Spiritual Sky was making it possible, Right. And all the devotees were taking part in Spiritual Sky. Because the way I did it, I would dip the incense, let it dry outside because of the sun. The weather was like India. They had a rainy season, but it was always sunny. So it was perfect for incense making, for drying it. And then in the morning before Sankirtan and before lunch prasadam, devotees would all sit in the prasadam room and package all that was done, listening to a tape from Golden Avatar of chanting or a Prabhupada lecture. And that's how Spiritual Sky came. It was a group effort. It wasn't just me, it was everybody. And nobody got paid. Even I didn't get paid, So it was perfect for the time, place, and circumstance. Then Prabhupada didn't like the Spiritual Sky because they got shampoos and all kinds of other things that had nothing to do with incense. And then it turned into jewelry. And that's when Nanda Kumar took sannyas, because he came to India to buy things for business, and Prabhupada said, forget that business. And he gave him sannyas. Because they were turning to business, too much business in those days. And Prabhupada was sorry about starting a business, because when you have business, then you have envy. And fortunately, the business actually went into the hands of the grihastas who used it for their sense gratification. And finally, and borrowing money from Prabhupada's book fund. And Prabhupada hit the roof because he didn't know about that. So there's a whole conversation about that. So they ultimately had to sell the business to pay off the book debt that they borrowed. And it went into Karmi's hand. Then the person in charge sold it to Karmi's. And within 3 weeks, he died of a heart attack, unexpectedly.
Who was that?
Rishabh Dev.
Bishop from Laguna Beach?
No, a different one.
When Prabhupada was in Beverly Hills, that was 1970.
Yeah,
So what book was he working on then?
Krishna book.
Yeah.
And it wasn't finished. That's why he wanted a place where he'd be undisturbed. And I told him, what about if devotees come? He said, only if presidents come. He didn't want any disturb. I used to bring his mail there, everything. So he wanted only so he didn't want any disturbance. So when presidents came, I blindfolded them, so they didn't know where he stayed. Yeah.
Sridhama was his personal servant, right?
No, it was Devananda and Nanda Kumar, I think. Because me and Tamal chose Nanda Kumar to be the servant, and Devananda did the typing. And those were the only two at the house, not Sudama. Huh?
He was in Japan by then.
Yeah.
Before Japan.
No, he was never Prabhupada's servant. No.
So then you got up.
Before those two, it was Kartikeya. He was a Filipino American. And he had a lot of problems with his mother. He would disappear. And that's when I had to cook for Prabhupada. Me and Tamal Krishna cooked for Prabhupada. That was in 1969 when that happened.
So on December 67, what was happening?
Yeah.
And Brahmananda?
So, well, I don't have the letters, so I can't remember. I have them on a pen drive.
But I mean, what was happening at that time?
Well, we were always looking for a new place. We actually didn't get it till 68. So, meanwhile, to support the San Francisco temple, I rented a storefront right next to the temple. On the other side was the Hells Angels diggers, and they were giving peanut butter and jelly sandwiches free, you know. And that was in competition with the San Francisco temple that was doing prasadam, and they were all coming to us, to hippies. I mean, 100 more would come every day. It was a very successful program, and it was all free, you know. And so the Hells Angels always got into little ruckuses with us, especially they would take our parking space in front of the temple with their motorcycles. So there was always, agitation. And they didn't like us. So anyway, Brahmananda was continuing with the Sankirtan in the park on weekends. You know, still most of the people had jobs in those days. So,
When did he take over ISKCON Press?
well, that came right after, like in the summer, when Prabhupada left. That's when I stopped printing the Back to Godhead, because they were doing it by offset press.
So Brahmananda was in charge?
Yeah, so he'd go back and forth. Sarup was his secretary.
Yeah. Did Prabhupada put him in charge?
Yeah, he was like the manager, but Sarup was in charge of the making of the magazine and editing and the content. Brahmananda was just the financial manager of the press, of ISKCON Press. And he did print the first Vyas Puja book. And Prabhupada was in Hamburg at the time. And it arrived on the day of his appearance day, on the very day it arrived. And Prabhupada was so happy because it was the first Vyas Puja book.
67.
No, in 69.
Oh, 69.
Yeah. Because Brahmananda, you know, the press was first started, but they were doing everything.
Yeah.
They didn't print the Vyas Puja, that came, or Sri Upanishad, they printed Nectar of Devotion, Sri Upanishad, but those came later. And then with the second canto, that was ready for 2 years, and we couldn't get it printed. So they did it chapter by chapter, and used to sell them on Sankirtan, and they sold better than the magazines, because people like to buy books, you know. Magazines you throw away, but books you keep. You put them on your bookshelf, you know. So that was the first small books being printed, and that was done by ISKCON Press. The problem with the press was the binding. I remember when Prabhupada got the first Nectar of Devotion, when he opened it, it fell apart in his hands. Ooh, that was bad. Because we used glue, but the glue wasn't good enough. The glue wasn't good enough. And so when he opened the book, you heard cracks, and then the pages fell out. So Prabhupada wasn't happy about that. But they got it fixed in the, that was the first, what should I say, the first volume. They didn't do all the books like that. It was an advanced copy, you know.
So the first press was in Boston,
Yeah.
and Prabhupada sent Satchuru.
I mean, Prabhupada had so many ideas. He had New Vrindavan for the press. He wanted there because they had houses. They would build a house, you know. There were so many things floating around, but nothing came into practice until Boston. Advaita was there. There was a whole, Pradyumna went there. Uddhava went there. With Uddhav. Uddhava was married to Leela Su.
Yeah.
This is 67 towards the end.
Yeah. Towards the end. You know. And that's why I left, because there was really nothing for me to do except treasury work. And someone else could be trained up. I think Rishi Kumar was trained up for that.
That was you already in 61 Second Avenue.
That came in 68.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Still in 26?
Yeah. That came in 68. Because Prabhupada sent me back there to my father's, and I made the first bookstore of ISKCON there. Because the way you entered the temple, you had to enter like a, what do they call the room?
Waiting
an ante-room, like,
Yeah.
you know, like a waiting room.
Yeah.
So I turned it into a bookshop, and then you would, the entrance was the temple.
Upstairs, isn't it?
It was upstairs, one flight, and then you walk around and there was a room, a small room, and then you keep your shoes there and enter the temple room. It used to be a tailor shop for the mafia. It was exquisite inside, all wood paneling, marble chip floors. I mean, it was a beautiful temple, and there was an alcove with mirrors, and that's where we put the Vyasasana. And it just, Prabhupada just fit right in there. And when you had kirtan, you danced in front of him, you could see yourself in the three mirrors. I saw the film and I saw myself in the mirror, in the film. It shows it. But it was perfect. And we hung all Jyotirani's paintings. It looked really beautiful. And it was big enough to put Lord Jagannath inside. And we slept underneath the altar. We built bunk beds, three layers. And that's how there was like 11 or 12 people. So we were able to sleep there. And it had a big kitchen. It was perfect place. And a nice location. And there was nobody else in the building. It was only a 2-story building. There was one other apartment, and we tried to get him to leave so we could make that Prabhupada's residence, because Prabhupada had to still stay at 26 Second Avenue, which was a few blocks away from us. We were on 6th Street, Prabhupada was on 2nd Street.
So now you're up to January 1998.
So Prabhupada arrived. Next time I'll read the letters,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of letters in July and in August.
How many letters in 68?
There's a total of, in 67, there's a total of 45 letters, which is a lot of letters.
Plus everybody else.
And then 68 was another 45. 69 was big with 55 letters.
To Brahmananda.
Yeah, so most of the letters, there are a total of about 200 letters. So most of the letters were in those 3 years, 67, 68, 69. That accounted for about 160 letters. The remainder 40 letters were when Prabhupada was in Africa. I mean, when Brahmananda went to Africa. For a whole year there were no letters because Brahmananda was the president at Juhu. He was the first president. And that's when he was sent to Africa in 71. Prabhupada went there in 71 to Africa.
You also got a lot of letters from Prabhupada.
Well, I looked, the way you find it out, you go on the Vedabase 2019 and you say, "My dear Hansaduda," and then you get all the letters. So Hansaduda got 135. Most of the people got, Kirtan only got about 90, I think. And Harigriva about 100 something. Most were in the low hundreds.
And did you do my dear?
Mine was
Brahmananda?
about, mine was about 90, I think 90.
Because Prabhupada was having you do so many things.
Yeah. I was busy with it. I wasn't a writer. Even when we did the Vyas Puja offering, I said, "Brahmananda, you write for me and I'll sign it." I was never a good writer.
So now you've pretty much gone through 67.
Well, most of the letters are, when Prabhupada is away in India. So there's still a lot of letters. you know.
keeping up,
So next week we'll make sure that Sachinandan is here on time.
or the other one, Ganapati, evening.
Oh,
Yeah, we're not sure.
But whose laptop?
yeah.
It belongs to the temple, so
Oh.
I'll have to get that.
Okay.
Let's
Yeah.
try.
Yeah.
Here's some Mahaprasad here. Thank you, Gargamuni.
Okay, Haribo.
It's fine.
Sorry it didn't go the way I planned.
Uh-huh.